Welcome to the Action Lab Leadership Podcast, where we have honest, unfiltered conversations with business leaders. I'm Danny, founder of Action Lab Leadership, and today I'm joined by Mario Valadez, the managing partner of Conroe's Incredible Pizza in Houston, Texas area. Mario, welcome to the show.
Hi, Danny. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you, and I think let's just go ahead and dive in, not waste any bit of time here.
Yes,
In
sir. Sounds
your
good.
role as managing partner, you have a lot of different responsibilities and you have a lot of people reporting to you. You are a leader in your role. But how do you define leadership? What does it mean to you for someone to be a leader within an organization?
In this industry, as far as what we do in the FEC, we really practice on servant leadership. We try to, teach that with all our staff members and especially our management team, just because, we're taking care of the managers and we're taking care of our frontline employees, they're going to take care of us, and it's always, very critical, I think, is, you want to treat them fair and, not just, just any kind of, person, stuff like that. We want to get to know them and stuff. But again, that's to tell these guys, look, we're talking to them and and having conversation and teaching them, and just being a leader that we're there for them, then it's easier to, hey, I need someone to cover a shift. Not a problem. Done deal. Um, and but if we treat them like crap, then yeah, they're not gonna want to come in. And we're there, side by side when we're getting our butts whipped out there, we're there. And so my management staff, they're really good. Lauren and them, they should have done a great job as far as, you know, passing that along to the rest of the managers and the supervisors and the trainers and stuff like that. So again, I think we really preach on servant leadership, around here to help, because like you said, it's a big place. And there's a lot of moving parts, but it definitely helps out as far as um, being a leader like that. So
Well, I'm noticing behind you, you've got some Texas memorabilia that you happen to be a very big fan of Texas football. Do
oh
you
yeah.
take inspiration from the way that a football program is structured in either hierarchy or culture or trust or anything like that? Do you take inspiration from that organization and how you approach your people and the way that you build culture?
Actually we do. Just, listening to some of the pregame and postgame, conversations and listen to some of the players, how they talk about the leadership. And, any team, regardless if it's a sports team, whether it's your work team, whatever it is, we have our ups and downs. I mean, Texas had some bad seasons and stuff like that, but they always revert back to leadership. The leadership wasn't there. It wasn't, with the coaching staff, it wasn't with the team. And and here Texas, listening to them, I mean, it seemed like, they're heading the right direction. There's no one person on this team, it's everybody, and it's funny that the other day there was during post game, they're interviewing one of the defensive players, and you know, it was the news was trying to put a spin on it, and he was like, no, it's everyone. It's the defense, it's the special team, then it's the offense, it's all of us, and so he corrected the news reporter, and I thought that was just great. So absolutely. Taking some of the programs like this and applying some of the principles to what we do every day, I think it's a great milestone for us and a teachable moment, as you would say. So
This idea of servant leadership, let's take this all the way back to the beginning of your career. And you had started as a go-kart attendant at a family entertainment center a long time ago. And you had mentioned to me that in that role you'd been passed over a number of times for promotions. What was
absolutely.
that experience like of being on the receiving end of someone who maybe lacked servant leadership? And how has that informed the way that you treat your own people?
And that was I was young, I was in high school, I was always working. I mean, I was working, and when I started this, I wasn't planning to be in the FEC industry. I wanted to be a coach. And but one of my first jobs is a go-kart attendant, and you know, obviously when you're a teenager, you do, you're trying to be silly and stuff like that, but I was always working. Um and but I'll have football practice or soccer practice, whatever it is. And it felt discouraging because I mean, like, all right, position came up, like, I'm gonna get it next. I'm gonna get it next. And then when you didn't get it, I'm just like, well, crap, what's wrong with me? And all the other managers, they talk you up and, they're like, yeah, I don't know. Or they avoid the question and stuff like that, or, why. And it just, after a while, it starts wearing on you. And then I'm just like, man, it's time for me to get another job. This is not going anywhere or whatever. And again, I was just like, you know what? Anyway, this is not what I'm, going to be doing. And then one day, the general manager came up to me and, had a conversation and, and he's like, look, the managers are talking, and I'm sorry. And also because it doesn't help, I have a lazy eye. So, when I get tired, it wanders off by itself. And, so he's like, "Ah, I thought you were doing drugs and, stuff like that." I go, man, look, I go to school, football practice, soccer practice. I come to work and that's all I do. So I'm tired. I'm here, working for you, tired, and doing all these open close shifts and just whatever I can to get some, because at the time, I mean, I wanted some money. I wanted to get a car. I need gas money, all that stuff. And so. But anyway, I mean, he just said like, look, I'm sorry, I assumed, and that old cliche, what happens when you assume, and but he didn't really get to know me. Not we're the best of buds. I mean, we check in on each other every once in a while, and but that experience right there, I was like, that was my first step as far as, hey, look, if I'm going to go into any kind of leadership position or management position, it's like get to know these guys, understand them, you know, not that you have to be best friends or anything, but I mean, it's just that, hey, he cares about me. He talks to me. So throughout my career, in the management, and I started off pretty young, you know, um, I try to do that. I try to, pick up people, talk to them, and have a good time and understand them and, and develop them. I mean, that's, what they want to do and stuff like that. And any way I can help out, it's award winning. It's fulfilling for me. So, but yeah,
It reminds me a little bit of one of the lines from the Ted Lasso show of be curious, not judgmental, or in this case, be curious, not assumptive. Because when we make
absolutely.
assumptions about another person or their motivations, how often are we actually right? And it sounds like what you're saying is approach, communicate with your team, ask some questions, be just curious about what's going on in their lives and build a relationship with them.
Correct.
And you learn a lot more about them that your assumptions, you break through a lot of those assumptions that you might have had.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned that you wanted to be a coach,
Yes.
and you also referred to watching some pre and post game pep talks from the Texas football coach. I'm curious when you're beginning to open the facility at the beginning of a day or start a busy day, do you give pep talks to your team? And what are the ingredients of a Mario Valadez pep talk when it comes to like bringing in the piece of coach that you hoped you'd always be?
I think I bring in the energy. I think sometimes they think I'm nuts because I'll go be woohooing in the store and high fives or fist bumps. It's like, how's everyone doing today? Ready to have a great day? And try to pump them up, and especially when we got big groups coming in. Doors like, guys, you ready? We got to get pumped. It's almost like banging the chest, and like, let's go, baby. And so I think sometimes they think I'm nuts. But yeah, no, we go around, we just make sure we're ready and just, get everyone in a good mood, have some maybe good music going on or whatever, and just kind of feeling the vibe there for, like, hey, we're getting ready to have a good time. It's not all, doom and gloom here, and so yeah, so I probably bring a lot of energy sometimes, probably more than they want.
I'm sure there are some days that some of the tired teenagers are looking at you thinking, "Oh, not today, Mario,
Yeah,
not today. Just let me
exactly.
be." But I appreciate that you are not willing to compromise on the fact that you're an energetic person,
Oh
and that's the
yes.
kind of leader that you are. You want to bring the pep, you want to bring the energy, you want to bring the fun, and I think it's helpful to remember. And I struggled with this early on in my career that I would take everything so seriously all the time. And not to say that we don't have responsibilities and that the things that we do aren't important. They are. We want to be good at what we do. We want to take our responsibilities seriously. But I was kind of gripping onto things so tightly for so
Oh yeah.
long that when I learned to loosen up and enjoy the ride and have some fun, because we can have fun in business, we can have fun in the face of stress and obstacles. Man, it was so much more exciting when I was able to embrace that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I'll share something very similar. I would just like you, Danny, when I was younger, I mean, I was uptight and, when I went to go approach guests, they say body language is everything. And so when I would go, when there was like a guest complaint or something, when my younger years, I'll go talk to him, I was always like, going up to him. And so, one of my managers said, "Hey, look, your body language that you're tight. You put people on the defensive when you have your arms closed and you're talking to them, you know." And so that always stuck with me. And so, I kind of pass that on to, some of our other managers that get in that kind of situation. Hey, I noticed that, you loosen up, because then you put the guests at ease, by just being relaxed and not, so tense and stuff like that. It's like, I know sometimes we don't want to deal with them. Sometimes, they're just calls. But I mean, if you're relaxed and you do it, then you're going to put them, it'll make it a smoother transition back and forth as far as, whatever the issue is or the challenge. So yeah.
Well, you bring a lot of energy, like you said, and I've spent some time researching from communication specialists in various different kind of industries, and they talk about how we want to be our authentic selves and we want to be who we are. And at the same time, we also need to meet another person where they are kind of emotionally. So if you've got, let's say, a frustrated customer who's angry, do you tend to bring in your really energetic self, or do you kind of tone that down a little bit, turn the volume knob down, meet them where they are, and then bring them up to where you want to go? What does that interaction look like when someone's at a very different place than you?
Well, it's I mean, you're right. I do bring it down, and I come in and I'm very open and understanding, and I listen to them as far as what the issue is. We talk about it and stuff like that, and then, we resolve it, and then we move forward, and we have a good time, and then then I might turn it up when I see them later on in the store. Like, how you doing? You doing all right? Just checking on you, and then they're laughing and having a good time and stuff like that. So yes, but when I first approach those situations, yes, it's a very it's more of a understanding, listening mode. Yeah, hey, I want to try to help you. Let's talk. And but being very sympathetic and apologizing, but just listening. And then later on when we resolve it, like I said, I'm just, hey, how are you doing? You doing all right? All right. I'm glad you're having a good time. Everything all right? And then you can kind of cut up with them and stuff like that. And I think they appreciate that. Especially the follow up. Because sometimes people just go and they don't see them. So and the guys do a really good job, when there's an issue that they do follow up and just check on them, or as they're passing through and they just happen to see them, like, hey, you guys doing okay? So yeah.
Yeah, you build the rapport with them. So later
Right.
on, when you come back to check in on them, it means more.
Absolutely.
So throughout your career, I'm sure, as all of us have, you've probably made plenty of mistakes and you failed at plenty of things, just like all of us have, right?
Oh
When
yeah.
you look back at your own leadership journey, what was early on maybe a painful mistake that you made in your leadership journey? And what have you learned from that? And how do you apply that today?
You know, when I was when I was younger, so I started working for, a smaller game room, and it was more of a street location. I had some little bit of more casual restaurant experience back in the day. But it was strictly game rooms, and it was mall concepts and stuff. And I was 24 years old, and I got asked to move to be a general manager for an $11 million location. I'm just like, whoa, I'm excited, I'm nervous, but I'm still in my development. I'm still, developing, myself, because I really, at that point, I was a GM for a smaller, street location, mall locations, but never something of that magnitude. Um, and so yeah, I was scared. And so that's when I first moved to California, and I'm here in charge, and I'm like, my head is spinning around like, how did I get in this position? I'm a general manager for this, multi-million dollar store, and I'm just like, whoa, I'm in over my head, And so yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. I was, I was never really taught any of that stuff. So a lot of it was self-taught or making mistakes. Maybe I had help, prior to them helping. We had these, obviously conference calls and stuff like that to help you understand the numbers and stuff like that. But it just, I was like, hey, how do I manage older people? I was terrified if I'm here at 55-year-old guy and I'm 24 and I'm managing him, and so that was not a mistake, but a learning lesson. And like I said, I was not ready to be put in that position, but you know what? I made the mistakes. We moved forward. I learned from it. And I think I tell people, like that are kind of in the same position. I was like, you know what? Just try to learn as much as you can. You're gonna make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes and just keep moving forward. You got into that position because you did something great. They saw something in you to be put in that position. And so I have to remind myself, it was, when I do it again, absolutely. I was very blessed to be put in that position and just, wasn't ready for it, but we made it work. And yeah, and so it just, here I am today. So
We've all had moments in our careers or our businesses where we have that we're in over our head and our heads spinning and we think to ourselves, how did I get in this position? Who gave me this job? What am
yeah,
I doing? All those kinds of things. And obviously, from that point as a kid, essentially in your mid 20s to now, you've grown a lot in your own leadership journey and your skills and your experience, all the different things. But when you look today at where you are in business, do you still have those days or seasons when you do feel like even today, maybe, oh man, I'm in over my head, or days where you get really discouraged if things aren't going well, or you're not seeing the results that you want to see? What does that look like today when you have some difficult challenges in front of you, and how do you get on the other side of those?
yeah, I mean, yeah, great question, Danny. I mean, yeah, I mean, we still have them. I mean, I still have them, to this day. Just, whether it's projects, whether it's a project that we're working on back in the game room or just trying to develop procedures and stuff like that. It's like, we sit down, we kind of work out, work everything out and, see what the pain points are and then what can we do to move forward and get to that. But yeah, I mean, it's the days as far as excursions, it happens. I mean, it was I'm trying to remember. There's it was one time. Oh, one of the projects. It was so we're putting up um, a new playscape in the playroom. And so I get a notice to that I had to shut it down, but they didn't come and talk to us. They posted on the front door, and it was from the city. And the only reason why they saw it because we posted on Facebook coming soon, but they didn't come talk to us. They put it on they put the citation on the door. I'm like, what's this? And everyone's freaking out and they're scared and stuff like that. So I go down to the city, talk to the engineer, and we're talking, and it was just like, well, yeah, and he really didn't know. It's like, why didn't you guys come and talk to me? I mean, this is crazy. And so then he pulls out all the codes and like, well, it has to be off the wall so many feet and this and that, and we need all the paperwork and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my goodness, just for changing out an attraction. I didn't think it was going to be this much red tape. And so, we had the attraction ready, but we had to keep it shut just because trying to jump through all these hoops of getting the paperwork that the city needed. And then we went back and forth, like, well, we have trellis and it's too close to the wall. I go, well, no, the trellis doesn't say anything about that. It's the netting that's supposed to be so many feet from the wall. And so we went back and forth, and then I had to go to other locations. I go and took pictures and sent it to him. I'm like, well, you're gonna have to go, address this then, because here's three examples right here. As it finally passed, but I mean, it was just like it was very discouraging. And then, trying to work with the city and then then not knowing that you have to get another, certificate of occupancy, just because you made a small change like that, you have to go through that whole process again. So I have to get the fire department out here and we had to do the whole inspection, and so I was like, oh my goodness, it just that was very discouraging. I'm just like, wow. And if I knew, and that's just goes with, not knowing, how, putting in attractions and stuff like that. Obviously, some of the bigger people, that've done that or done it before, taking those challenging steps, they got it. I didn't know. I thought I would just like, look, I'm changing this little attraction, nothing big, no power requirement, no nothing. But yet, the structure, and I get it. They have a responsibility, and that's great. Um, but yeah, it would just, it was painful.
Well, in those kinds of moments, whether it's with that city example or anything else, and you're feeling discouraged, you talked about those pep talks earlier. Do you give yourself a Mario pep talk? Do you find ways to build up your own energy? Because when we are discouraged, when we have that things aren't going well, and this is so much harder than it needs to be, and man, why I wish I could get on the other side of this, or I wish I had the results that I want. And we feel that sense of discouragement. Sometimes it comes in fatigue, sometimes it comes in self doubt, sometimes it comes in different symptoms. But in order to
Mhm.
get to the other side of that, do you focus on bringing the energy? Do you focus on getting yourself back into the right mental state to attack other problems in your business? Because the problems are always going to be there.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, yeah, no, I do. Actually, I talk to my mom to calm me down and stuff like that, and she's my rock and my guardian angel that gives me that pep talk. Um, and after we talk about it, and she gives me her words of encouragement and say some blessings and stuff like that, and I'm like, all right, let's go. She's like, it's all gonna work out, Mijo. Let's go. You got this. And so, yeah, and so yeah, it refocuses me, and then we move on, and just until and again, then these guys feed off me, and so they can tell, and I'm like, look, we got this. Here's what's going on. Don't worry about it. Y'all focus with the guests and stuff like that. I'm dealing with this, and I'll keep you posted as we go forward, and and move along with this project or whatever project or challenge that we might be facing. So.
Well, if we turn this around from the idea of challenges to the idea of successes and things that have gone well,
Mhm.
are there any examples of accomplishments that you've had in your business journey that while you were experiencing them, maybe you didn't fully appreciate how big of a deal it was, but now when you look back on that and you reflect on those successes and you reflect on those milestones and those wins, that you realize that was such a vital stepping stone in your own business growth. That was such an important moment that you can appreciate now that at the time you didn't fully appreciate.
It just, oh man, that's a good one, Danny. It just been an operation for so many years. I mean, sometimes you don't realize it, and you're grinding it. You're grinding it day in and day out, day in and day out. But you're also making, in our industry, we're making memories for a lot of families and a lot of lives. And our clientele's it's kind of all over the board. You know, we have senior Tuesdays, and they come in, so it's 55 and older. They come in, they have their day, and and then just watching, because you go to FECs, you don't think a bunch of seniors are going to be in here. That's far from it. And people, when vendors come and see me, it's like, what's with all the old people around here and stuff like that. And so, like I just explained to us our senior Tuesday and stuff like that. And they're amazed, on how many seniors that we have in here. They don't go to the game room. But when the grandkids come in, and that's where, they know, hey, look, we got good food there. I know a place, and then they come in, and then they let the grandkids play the games. But you know, this seniors, like I said, I mean, just sitting back and you think that it's hey, we're open for business, they're coming in great and stuff like that. But we developed that, that particular day. And but just sitting back, and then the stories, we have a big 57 Chevy in the front, and all the stories we hear, I had one, and they're teasing the cashiers like, "Are you taking care of my car?" and stuff like that, and can I is that car available for tickets? But just hearing the stories that they tell to us, it's looking back at it, it is pretty amazing. And all the people that come in here and support us, I think that's an accomplishment um right there itself. And these guys, and being in business for so long, I mean, that's huge. And the people that came and helped us, get to this, and help with the guest service, and help take a step with us, and as their first job, and now they're bringing their kids here. I just, looking back at it, it's great and fulfilling. I mean, and that's success, when these kids come back and like, "Oh, Mr. Mario, you remember me?" And it's like, "Oh yeah," and they got kids, and or their work, they're doing, great work out in other industries and stuff like that. So that's very challenging. I mean, that's very rewarding, and so, and it's very rewarding, just that happening, and just listening to everybody, just being here for the people, I guess, looking back at it. So,
That's one of the things that, as you and I've gotten to know each other even more over the last, 6, 7 months, is that you're very good at focusing on the impact of your business, kind of the overall why, the purpose,
mhm.
and the memories that you can make. Especially, I know you focus so much time and effort on charitable contributions or hosting nonprofits and underprivileged families or kids that just need a little extra help in the community, and you get so fired up by being able to do that. You find so much
Yeah.
fulfillment in that. I would imagine
Mhm.
that in those moments of discouragement that you talked about earlier, when you can reattach to your purpose, when you can focus again on that bigger vision and your why, does it help you get on the other side of that sense of discouragement?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, um, it does, and especially, and it just sometimes just works. God works in mysterious ways. When I'm down or whatever, and then I'll go walk the floor real quick, and then I run into somebody, and we just we start talking, and we're just having a good old time and stuff like that. It just like, this is why we're doing this. This is our purpose. Of why we exist, and and who we are and stuff like that. So absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up this conversation, I've really enjoyed hearing your passion about helping people grow, about being there for your customers, and building culture within your organization. What is one action that you would recommend for the audience, whether they're watching or listening, that if they want to become better leaders in their business, if they want to become better leaders in their community or leaders in their family, whatever leadership means to them, what is one action that you recommend they start taking immediately in order to become a better leader and a better version of themselves?
And that's a good one. One action. Oh, I be a servant to them. Be a servant to your staff. Be a servant to your guest. Serve them, and that can translate into several different things. That's ooh. And it all ties back into that servant leadership. Of it is that serve a purpose. And get to know your staff members. Treat them fairly. Go in with understanding. Listen to all sides. Yeah, I mean, that's a good one, Danny.
Well, I feel that you truly care a lot about your business, about your community, about your people, and I think that you've served our audience well by sharing some of the your own stories and the things that you've found successful and the things that you've also struggled in. So, Mario, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Danny.
And thank all of you. Thank you to everybody watching and listening for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and send this episode to a friend that you think would enjoy it. And go out there, take action in your business, and become the leader that your team needs.